Good morning, everybody. I'm Deputy Provost David Balfour. I'll be standing for the Provost this morning and chairing the meeting. I would like to welcome everybody to the Grangemouth Community Education Centre, and I'd like to thank the Management Committee for accommodating our request to use the venue. The agenda for this morning was issued last Tuesday, the 20th of June, and a supplementary agenda which contained details of 2 deputation requests were received. There's 3 motions this morning. After discussing the motions with the group leaders, I'm happy to take them early on in the meeting. Is everybody happy with that? Okay. Happy. And the 2 deputations, are we happy to hear the deputations this morning?
Agreed.
Okay. Thank you. Just a few other things. If I can ask members to refrain from talking or commenting during speeches by our councillors and remain respectful of points of view. Also, if you can try and refrain from repeating whatever else has been saying as well. I'll introduce some breaks throughout the morning, and hopefully we'll be finished early, so for lunch, but that not being the case, we'll probably break around 1 PM. Okay. And for anybody attending remotely, if they wish to speak, if you can raise the hand icon on your screen, or wave if you have to, or cut in somehow. If you don't do that, you may miss your chance to speak. Okay. And if you can ensure all your mobile phones are either switched off or on silent during the meeting as well, thanks. Okay, and we'll pass on to Colin for the second.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. And as you've noted, we have apologies from Provost Bissett. Deputy Provost Balfour.
Present.
Councillor Aitchison.
Here.
Councillor Anslow.
Here.
Councillor Binney. Here. Councillor Bowes.
Present.
Understand apologies have been submitted by Councillor Brown. Councillor Buchanan.
Present.
And we also have apologies from Councillor Bundy. Councillor Colley.
Present.
Councillor Deacon.
Present.
Councillor Devine.
Present.
Councillor Flynn.
Present.
Councillor Forrest.
Present.
Councillor Garner.
Here.
Councillor Hannah.
Present.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Kerr.
Here.
Councillor McCabe. Councillor Miko John.
Present.
Councillor Murtagh.
And shot.
Councillor Nimmo.
Present.
Councillor Patterson.
Present.
Councillor Patrick.
Present.
Present.
Councillor Ritchie.
Present.
Councillor Robertson.
Present.
Councillor Sinclair.
Yep.
Councillor Spears.
Present.
And Councillor Steinbank.
Present.
Thanks, Colin. I also forgot to mention that the meeting this morning has been live streamed and recorded, and a recording will be posted up shortly after the meeting on the Council's YouTube channel. If we move on to declarations of interest, do we have any declarations? No. Okay, thank you. On to minutes and information bulletin. Okay, the minute of the meeting, Falkirk Council, the 29th of March. Any questions? No. 23rd of May. All right. Have we agreed in the minute?
Agreed. Agreed.
All right, sorry. 23rd of May, agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay. Volume minutes, 2022-23. Agree on that?
See if there's any questions.
Any questions? No questions. And volume information bulletin, point 4, 22-23.
Deputy Provost,
Got a question?
I've got a question in relation to that. It's just a general point. If you look at the information bulletin, there's well over £62 million worth of contracts been agreed. And I'm a bit concerned regarding the scrutiny surrounding the awarding of the contracts. It makes mention that group leaders have been consulted on the contracts being awarded, but the rest of the elected members haven't been involved. And I think there could be issues in relation to that. They've all been dealt with under delegated powers, but I would like to see a lot more scrutiny when it comes to these sort of things.
At 19.1.
So if I could maybe come back first, Deputy Provost, on the points that Councillor Nimmo has made, and if we could then go to Councillor Spears on his 19.
No, it's just to correct Councillor Nimmo, not all group leaders have been informed. Thank you.
So if we could return to the substantive point raised by Councillor Nimmo. Councillor Nimmo is accurate that this has all been done in accordance with the Council's scheme of delegation and its contract standing orders, which are both been reviewed relatively recently by the Council and approved. This won't be the only opportunity members get to see some of these contracts. So where there are large contracts with a value over £7.5 million, there's a prior notification report will come to the Executive and has done in the case of some of these contracts where the contract strategy has been discussed, and in some of them in relation to social care, for instance, there has been discussion at the Integration Joint Board on which the Council is represented too. So there's a balance, I think, to be struck between councillors being involved in the large scale spend and then the opportunity to question, to scrutinise, which I think is part of the opportunity in this information bulletin, to ask any questions in relation to the contracts which you see listed before you. I think also members will be aware that there is a working group established looking at the whole issue of the arrangements under the standing orders and the scheme of delegation. And I think the balance between where issues lie between elected members and officers of the council will be one of the issues considered within that, and there'll be a report back on that later this year.
Okay. Any other questions?
Provost, Deputy Provost.
Councillor
In relation to the information bulletin, and having had a wee look through and done a wee bit of digging, some of the contracts have included in them around the community benefits, some have the inclusion of employment of young apprentices. So it's a bit of a global question on this. How do we decide what contracts have which in them? Also, I'm aware that there's some protected contracts where we actually do look to positively employ some of our care experienced young people. And the final part of that is I would like to see us do something about inclusion around the community benefits, around community health and wealth building going forward, because that will be a significant way of ensuring that our procurement is as local as possible, but also we get the biggest bang for our buck in all of that. So I was just wondering if maybe a wee bit of explanation around why community benefits in some, not others, and why apprentices, and around the other areas, whether or not there's the ability to include that as we go forward. So I'm aware we're actually reviewing a procurement strategy at this moment.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. There are a number of strands, I think, within that question. So first of all, on how are contracts chosen? First of all, there is a legal criterion for that. So there is a threshold set at £4 million where there is a duty to consider community benefits. In fact, in practice, we look at contracts significantly below that level. And we're really looking across all contracts to see where they're going to be suitable for community benefits. I think it is partly a case for thinking of the nature of the contract itself. Some will be suitable and lend themselves to the kind of traditional community benefits like apprenticeship opportunities, and some won't. So if you think, for instance, if we were contracting or procuring our telecoms, that's not really going to throw up an opportunity for apprenticeship, but some longer term term engineering consultancy contract often will. Some construction contracts will too. So it is closely examined, I think, as part of the procurement process to see where the opportunities are particularly for apprenticeship opportunities, which Councillor Meikle-John has referred to. In relation to the community wealth building aspect, that is going to be a growing strand of the work across the procurement team and on services engaged in procurement. I think members may be aware there's a bill working its way through Parliament at the moment, and procurement and spend will be one of the 5 pillars of the approach to community wealth building. It is something that is already looked at. You know, each year we aim to have a percentage of our spend spent locally, and local spend is a part of aiming towards community wealth building. And more recently, I think, in recognition that this is a growing area within the council's work, there's been a multidisciplinary team of officers established just to make sure that all the areas that are spending across the council are drawn into these areas of consideration.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. I've 3 or 4 different questions. First question is for Mr. Kettrick. If you can make your way there. Thanks, Paul. It's on pages 4, 6 and 9. Dunelm. Why is there 3 different quotes for investigation? Investigations.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. The work at Grangemouth for Protection Scheme for the site investigations was broken up into lots to reflect the areas that the work was ongoing in. These works relate to lots 10, 11 and 12, 2 of which have been completed and 1 is which is nearing completion.
Okay, my second question is page 52, the replacement of modular sports chasing facilities. I just want to know where the new ones will be situated.
Thank you again through yourself, Provost. The pavilions that are being delivered are in, and I'll just pull up my list just to confirm them, and I can also give you the timescales for their completion. There is Glen Park in Hall Glen, Anderson Park in Bonnybridge, Russell Park, Stainhouse Muir, Tiggets Hall Park at Dunny Pace, and Stirling Road Park between Larbert and Falkirk. All projects are currently going through the fabrication stage, with them all expected to be completed. The last one is completed early October.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Paul. My second part of the question is for Martin Tom. Is Martin online or is he here?
Online.
Hi, Martin. For the page 28, you probably answered the 2 questions at once. Page 28 and pages 31 to 35. Page 28, the £23 million for care and support services. Then pages 31 to 35, where all providers are awarded 450,000. I just want to know why that was.
Thank you, Chair. And members may recall probably about a year ago I brought a paper to Council highlighting that we'd planned to use the Scotland Excel framework for all our care at home provision for a period of 12 months. and the total value of that contract is just over 30 million. Unfortunately, Scotland Excel declined to reopen their framework, which meant that we would have been unable to use the providers that are shown in the second part of the bulletin. There are currently around 34 providers, I think it is, that are on the Scotland Excel framework, and we had hoping they would open it up to all the providers that are currently within Falkirk. Now, that would have allowed us some time to develop our own framework within the context of increasing costs, increasing demand for services, and providers really struggling at this time to recruit staff. So our thinking at the time was we would use Scotland Excel for 12 months and then we would develop our own framework. Unfortunately, because they wouldn't reopen the framework, it meant we were in a position where we had some of our existing providers on Scotland Excel and some who would have been out with any framework. So the second cohort of providers that are showing there with an estimated cost of, or a maximum cost rather, of 450,000 are those providers that aren't on the Scotland Excel framework. And for each of them, we've had to enter into a single provider framework agreement. Now, the maximum value of that's 450,000. However, it's anticipated that many will be significantly lower than that, and some may be around that cost. It's very difficult to tell the true value of cost for these providers because it depends on their capacity, the capacity within the in-house service, and the level of demand that we get. So our proposal really is that we implement these single framework agreements with those providers listed. We continue with Scotland Excel for those providers that are on their framework, and we work to implement our own framework for all those providers by April next year. There's a lot of work ongoing just now, looking at what that new service specification will look like. We're engaging with all our providers around the development of that, and I think picking up Councillor Meiklejohn's point earlier, we are looking at the benefits that we can get for the local community within that contract. So we plan to bring a paper back to the committee in the autumn, which will set out our ask for the new contract going forward. Hopefully that answers the question. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Martin. And my final questions is for Douglas Gardner. You there, Douglas?
Yeah, I'm here, Councillor, yeah.
On page 38, they're just over £13.2 million for voids. Is this just for trades and not materials?
Good morning, Councillor. I can confirm that is for labour and for materials.
Okay. And my last question, Douglas, is page 50, and leading on for the previous question, £10.6 million for kitchens and bathrooms. Are these just for void properties or for all properties?
I can confirm, Councillor, they're for both void and lived-in properties.
Thanks, Douglas. Do we know how many properties that would cover?
It would cover all properties, Councillor. To be honest, but as I say, we've got a particular focus just now on void properties at present.
Right, okay, thanks very much, Douglas. Thanks, Deputy Provost.
Thanks, Councillor. Okay, any other questions? We'll move on to the rolling action log. Colin.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. And as usual, the rolling action log provides information on decisions previously made by the council where a further report is called for, and just provides information on the reporting date for those reports and an update on progress. But the rolling action log is also available for members just to ask questions in relation to those items.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Murtagh.
Nothing bad. Good morning. Yeah, I always thank Colin, for the explanation of what the rolling action log is for, and that for previous decisions where we've made, determined that a further report should come forward, or maybe an action from that report is incomplete. And it's just, I kind of noted that obviously we made a decision some time back, I think it was March 2021, in terms of the elected member champions. And in that decision, it was set out the framework of what an elected member champion was and what was expected of them, what their duties were, etc. And that formed the appendix for when we then appointed elected member champions, which is just over a year ago now. And although at that point, the action, which originally came from the decision in December 2021, I think, was then kind of complete and took off the rolling action log. One of the things when I was looking back, sorry, I'm getting a bit of an echo now. One of the things I was looking back in terms of what the duties of the elected member champions was to report to council. And at this stage, what we've not done is we've not obviously established that as a practice. So obviously I know that things which are kind of recurring reports that just happen don't go on the rolling action log, but there's a wee bit of disconnect there, where, and obviously speaking myself as an elected member champion, I'm not able to sort of fulfil that role and for like other elected members to ask questions or hold to account in terms of that action and what's listed in the duties of elected members. So I don't know whether Colin could maybe address whether there could be even a note of an action to kind of go back and look at that. And similarly, although I don't think it was specifically agreed in an action, there was a similar discussion around for example, external reps, consular reps, etc., about them coming back once a year and giving an account or providing a written account that could go into the information bulletin. But because it's never been recorded on the rolling action log, it's kind of fallen by. So I don't know whether you could comment on the process of that, and maybe I'll come back just to kind of explain a little bit about some of the context of why I'm asking. That would be really helpful. Thank you. So I'm not getting anything back from the room. I don't know if there's anybody speaking in the room, but it's on mute. Is anyone else online hearing?
I've lost the room as well. I've lost the room as well.
I do have form in breaking the council in the live stream, so it may well be me again.
Can't hear anything either, Laura.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I'll just check to see, is Councillor Murty able to hear now?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you. I think for some reason we're a bit unclear why the room became muted for reasons we're unsure about. I think Councillor Murty, Deputy Provost, raises a reasonable point. There is, I think, perhaps a disconnect here between what's formally recorded in the rolling action log, where it would be a decision, which is a minuted decision from the recommendations, and what was agreed within the remit of the champions themselves. So I think the best thing for me to do would be to go back to consider that remit again and think ahead for a future council meeting of how best that champions role and report back was accommodated within a future agenda. And I'm happy to discuss that separately with Councillor Murty in particular.
I'm grateful for the noting of my reasonable, but I record not enough to be good point in terms of the question I've raised. I suppose one of the reasons I'm raising it, and perhaps Colin anticipates, is that I could have, when I was looking back at the volume of minutes, and I could have raised this under the volume of minutes, but I thought we could be here all day, is that some of the other criteria about what was decided in those meetings was about the ability of elected member champions within their remit, not just mine, in terms of influencing and being able to be consulted on things which go forward. So, for example, in the executive in May there was the report which came back which talked about the I think let's just frame it as the kind of best value audit or the recommendations and how that was going forward. But obviously, as not being a member of the executive, the champions wouldn't be able to kind of come and input, even in the terms of like maybe if a portfolio holder would be invited to kind of have a role in that. And I'm slightly frustrated, therefore, the outcomes which are reported and minuted in those meetings, I'm looking at them from my point of view and thinking, well, I don't understand their accuracy. I'm not at the meeting, so I can't question necessarily the validity of the minute, but they don't sit with where I feel we are in terms of, for example, discriminatory practices for holding meetings and equalities questions. And indeed, there's been matters which I've raised under my remit, which I am very concerned about, which I have for several months, which I've sent reminders I have not had a response to. So if I'm not able to raise it in terms of public council, I'm not able to get a response offline to matters which I think are relatively serious, then it creates that kind of democratic deficit and accountability. And I think that I would really like that to be addressed, because we're not meeting, as far as I can see, what we agreed way back in December of 2021 in terms of the demonstration of due regard to equalities practices, particularly and specifically as we agreed with in terms of with elected members. So obviously I have raised these issues offline. I'm not satisfied that what comes back and what's been reported in the executive meetings as having been achieved accords with my understanding of it, but there's no way of squaring that. So that's the context in which I'm asking, and like as I say, I'm not insignificantly concerned in that regard, so I would like it to be addressed as openly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. And I think, again, Councillor Murtagh raises a number of reasonable points. I think if I could return again to my earlier point about the working group, looking at the standing orders, the scheme of delegation, the issue of the role of champions was raised within that by one of the members of the group, so it will be one of the issues addressed within that context. So I've no doubt that the points that Councillor Murtagh is making will be taken account of within that discussion. I'm also conscious of Deputy Provost, we're on the rolling action log, and I think can't necessarily pursue this particular discussion in more depth under this item. I'm more than happy to meet with and speak to Councillor Murtagh separately to pick up these issues.
Okay, thanks, Colin. Are you happy with that, Councillor Murtagh?
I'm happy with that, but I do want to just note very quickly that a matter of discrimination raised is not a matter for discussion or review or whatever. When it's raised, then it has to be addressed immediately, and it's not a matter of considering what's best for the council or in balance of a review on standing orders. It's a matter to be addressed immediately and make sure that we're not undertaking or practicing things which we shouldn't be. So I just want to make that final point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Spears.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. It's page 33. It's the formal consultation proposed for the change of distance criteria from home to school transport. I see it's in progress and that we should report to the September meeting. But if you turn the page, it's the national uptake of the national entitlement card. I don't know if people know how difficult this is. You've got to go on computer, you've got to get verification. I understand a lot of the professional bodies are not taking in the verification of the card for our young people, but especially the parents who are going to have to run their kids to schools. They need a wee bit longer notice to maybe organise flexible working at their place of employment. The prime criteria is to get children to school safely, and we need to work in conjunction, depends how the boat goes on the day, and this seems to be dragging on, and we need to simplify the national entitlement card so that the kids can get free bus travel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr Mackay, are you there?
I'm indeed Deputy Provost. Thank you, Councillor Spears. The point you make is a very valid one, and it's one that we've sought to address through the schools. So we've written out to all parents, providing the opportunity for them to apply directly through the school, which takes some of the bureaucracy away, because obviously the school themselves can verify the identity of the young person and also upload a relevant photograph to the digital portal and send that off to the National Entitlement Scheme directly. That has been working successfully. The last update we had on the uptake was there was more than 650 children had taken advantage of that route in the last couple of weeks and was growing day by day. So we're expecting that to be a popular route as we move up to the summer, but obviously we'll be continuing that work in the new term as well.
Okay, thanks very much, David. I'm glad people are taking it up, but I think we need to advertise it a bit better so all parents are aware, because there is still a great deal of consternation in the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay, I'll move on onto the motions now. Let's see. We've got the two deputations initially. There's Mr Terry Galloway, who's on screen, and we've got Casey Ferguson, Gemma Ferry and Isa Santos, if they can maybe take a seat up at the end there. Yeah, we've got 12 minutes in total to speak, and if Mr Galloway would like to speak first, thanks.
Hello there, can you hear me okay?
It's a bit quiet, but we can just hear you.
Brilliant. Okay, so I'm grateful to Councillor Patterson for bringing this motion. My hope is that this chamber will give it unanimous, unwavering support for our care experienced people. And I want to especially thank the Falkirk champs, who will be the first group of care experienced people to address a council chamber in Scotland to support the UK-wide campaign. By the time I'd left care myself, I'd lived in over 100 places. We was left alone with no voice. And in the end, I did actually make a life for myself. However, my siblings suffered great trauma, losing their children to the care system. One experienced serious trauma and is still struggling against a system not designed for care experienced people, including having been in and out of prison, drug addiction and so forth. In their early 30s, my siblings had each cost the state over £1.2 million already. My sister, she was so traumatized that she ended up basically on drugs, alcohol, losing her children to the care system. And one day we was at a funeral for another person that we knew, and she was telling me that she felt she was going to be next, that she was going to die. And when your sister says something like that to you, what do you say? So all I could think of at the time is that we'd try and use our trauma and what we'd been through to change the system so that other people didn't suffer the same fate as we had. And that's what I spent the night talking to her about, and that was our promise to each other. But unfortunately, she was next, and months later, she was killed by her boyfriend, stabbed in the back. The system's broken, and we need change. Care experienced people are 70% more likely to die prematurely than any of their peers. That's 20 years off their lifetime, and we've known this for a long time. Now that Hazel's gone, there are plenty of more children in care right now and who are leaving the care system looking for love and looking for family, but who are exploited by criminal gangs, domestic violence and coercion, and this has to stop. We need to do more for our care experienced people, and we need meaningful relationships, we need love and we need nurture, and we'll only get that when everybody works together, and that includes you as a council, the Scottish Government, the UK Government, businesses, the third sector, the wider community. Everybody needs to take responsibility for this because we're in it together. These are children of the state, and they never asked to go into care. We're the only group who are actually have the state as our corporate parents. They're our legal parent, and we didn't ask for that. So this is about equality of opportunity. It's not about anyone feeling sorry for us. It's not about increasing stigma in any way. It's about equality and equity. We know time and time again how care experience are re-traumatizing themselves every time they fight for change. So please today listen to your champs when they speak next. Many care experience people suffer in silence as policymakers are often unaware how their rules create how the rules they create affect us, and that's the issue here. Some decisions, rules, and the way things are done sometimes have the opposite effect of helping us to access services, and this therefore increases inequality for care experienced people. So treating care experience as a protected characteristic will mean that you check how your policies across the whole council impact us. You can use this to access how accessible your services are to care experienced people, and you can do this through equality impact assessments. When we get this into UK legislation, just imagine what it'll be if everybody, not just inside your council, but everybody across the whole of government, all the agencies, the whole of society starts to do these equality impact assessments and see how their policies are impacting us. Now, it's really important for me to stress to you guys that I really appreciate what you're doing, and hopefully you will give unanimous support for this. But this is not just about your council. This is about sending a message out there to everybody that it's their responsibility as well, because, you know, at this moment in time, a lot of agencies just push everything onto the council and onto social care, and you guys can sometimes get overwhelmed by that, and that has to stop, which is why protected characteristics going around across the whole arm of the state is part of the solution to creating systemic change. Now, this campaign so far came as a result of the English Care Review proposing to UK government that care experience become a protected characteristic. Now, the UK government responded and said, no, we're going to do this through an extension of corporate parenting, and they're likely going to follow the model that you have in Scotland for corporate parenting, which is not going to be enough. We need the protected characteristics, and in terms of the protected characteristics, it is a reserved matter for Westminster, which is why the campaign covers Scotland, Wales and England. One of the key recommendations around this from the English Care Review was that the UK government consult the devolved nations on protected characteristics. Now, in the government's response, they've even refused to even ask the question in Scotland and Wales. So that's why this campaign is so important, and it's so important that people of Scotland really do, you know, shout about care experience. So far you will be the 34th council across the UK, and that'll be 15, you know, the councils in Scotland so far would be yourself if you pass it, Edinburgh and Ayrshire, and that will be representing around 15% of the population. In England, it's around 20% of the population, 34 councils in total so far, and we've got scores more councils coming on board in the next few months. Thank you for letting me talk, and sorry I rushed so quick because I want to give the champs as much time as possible, but I'm happy to take any questions offline, online. I'm happy to work with your council on some of the policies that'll make high impact, help reduce cost and improve outcomes as a result of protected characteristics. So that extends to your council as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galloway. Right, we'll pass on to Casey, Gemma and Isa from Falkirk Champs.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Gemma from Falkirk Champs. When you listen today, don't think poor wee things, rags to riches, because we're not. We are capable and we're proud. We are not vulnerable, that is not our character. We need protection and that is your job. I currently live in supported accommodation. which is good, but as I'm looking for my own place, I've become aware that having many addresses doesn't look great. It makes people question my ability to look after a tenancy and my maturity. I'm scared it will make people think I'm antisocial and behave badly. And that's not me. I'm so glad though that I've now moved past 5 years of address history where I had 8 addresses in the space of 4 years, with 3 of those in 2017 alone. Having care experience as a protected characteristic would give corporate parents such as housing associations and more generally landlords more understanding of our experiences that we face through no fault of our own.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm Issa from Falkirk Champs. As care experienced young people, we really rely on having local services. Things like local pools, gyms, and community centres really matter to us. Moving around in transport can be difficult. Some of us don't have the same wider family around, being able to offer lifts or support us to help us learn to drive or have the spare cash for us to do so. In Falkirk, we have been lucky to be supported to gain free access to the local gyms and leisure centres, which is amazing, but we still face the challenges of accessing things not on public transport routes and things not locally government owned like cinemas and such. This leaves us feeling disadvantaged and not being able to participate or gain the same experience as our non-care experienced friends. Having care experienced on the protected list means that our views and opinions would be actively sought, and that matters to us because we want to build our lives and raise our families here. We want to be part of designing a new future, and the more people aware of the barriers we face will ensure that they're removed as much as possible when decisions are being made. Children and young people don't only learn at school. Going to local clubs and groups can be a massive part of social learning, but this can be hard for care experienced young people to be a part of. We don't always have people to support us to get on waiting lists because we move around so much and we never get the chance to get on the top of the waiting list. And of course, there needs to be someone who can afford to pay for the clubs and provide transport as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Casey. I want to talk about participation in education a little bit. When a care experienced young person does not achieve their potential, that is what's expected of them. To change this, extra support is offered and a scaffolding of help is given to the child. Then if they do reach the expected levels of their peers, the support is removed. And people assume that the young people can do it themselves now. This is not always the case. We still return to live in places that are not supportive or helpful to learn. We were in care for reasons, and while we are in care, we deal with the emotions of being removed and living away from everything that we know. And if we go home, we could be living in situations that took us into care in the first place. A quote from someone in our group is, "How can we learn in school when our brains are in survival mode? When you're surviving, there is no space in your brain to take on new learning. Then the pressure to achieve can be overwhelming, but without additional support, it can be hard to do. So then we can start to think that we can't do it and that we are failures. Recognizing care experience as a protected characteristic will mean ensuring that support's available for as long as we need it, not just the minimum qualifications suggested by the government, but for long into our futures." Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Back to me. We face prejudice from people who think they know our families. Maybe they've taught or worked with one of our brothers or sisters, but people assume that we will be the same. And even if we are, understand that these negative behaviours have come from our past experiences and are often triggered by feeling scared, cornered, embarrassed, or forgotten. We deserve help to work through these and find other ways to express ourselves. People are scared of care experienced community. They're scared of how we will behave, of what is wrong with us. They assume we've done something bad in care and that we'll be bad again. This motion will highlight care experience and help people understand more fully what it means. So hopefully they won't be scared of us anymore. Because when people are scared, they get defensive. And the defences they put up block us from taking part in communities and the world around us. But now I would like to say thank you today. Thank you for listening to us, and thank you to all our council family and friends, especially our board members for supporting us to bring this motion to committee. But especially thank you to all the care experienced people who will give their time and have given their time to share their stories to make the UK a better place for the babies, children and young people who will come after us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have any questions? So,
Deputy Provost, sorry.
Councillor Meikle-John.
It was just to maybe ask a wee bit about the Champions Board, how it's made up, and just to tell us a wee bit about the Champions Board and the work of the Champions Board and what it's done and what you feel you've achieved.
Thank you, Councillor Meikle-John. We are Falkirk Champs, and we're a group of care experienced young people who are looked after by Falkirk Council and have been looked after by Falkirk Council in the past. We have members of our champs from kinship care. We have other types of care like adoption, foster care, residential care. There's another one, isn't there? Yes, same at blank, sorry. But yes, care experience comes in many forms, and we're made up of care experienced young people. We work with council officers, Falkirk Council, councillors, employees, and other corporate parents such as NHS, education, fire department, police, to help make Falkirk a better place and a more understanding place of care experience and just a better place for us to live. And we have achieved some incredible things over the years we've been around. One of those being we have started to work with various council to change the language used in social work around here. For example, vulnerable is now protected, as it is a corporate parent's job to protect us. And of course, we've also brought this motion here today to get care experience protected. I'd say that is some of our biggest achievements, and also that a giant achievement is our existence and just having the space to make care better for this region. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Just want to say a big thank you to all of you for coming along. I'm really pleased that the council has been able to give you this opportunity to be so articulate about and passionate about care experience. I just wanted to ask a little about how you see this, if this council approves this motion, as I hope we will unanimously, how you see it will improve your lot and the lot of other care experienced young people.
Thank you. We believe that if the council is to pass this motion, that when they're making decisions, particularly around things that would affect us, like the closure of swimming pools, the closure of sports facilities, things we need for our mental health, and around the school transport situation, we believe that the council will, when considering reducing, improving or opening any of these facilities or taking any of them away, that they'll stop and think, along with other protected characteristics, they'll think of care experience and how we benefit, how it will affect us. It will make us more seen in this region, and it will give us better access, better seen, better acknowledged that we exist. It'll acknowledge our existence and have us involved in through consideration in decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, Deputy Provost, and I just wanted to come in, so I may have to scoot off before the main motion is debated, and very much value the contributions that have been made. And although it was mentioned that the care experience young people are addressing council for the first time, I, as a member of previously the education executive, always very much valued the contribution that they were able to make there. So I just wanted to ask that, kind of building on my previous point, politics is also, although you're saying you want to make sure that the views of care experienced people and young people in particular are considered decision-making table, I wonder if you've given consideration that politics and local government generally, is also for everybody and is enriched by having a wide variety of people from various backgrounds, as many backgrounds as possible around the table, to be able to input directly in decision making. And as you've demonstrated today, you're very able and eloquently, able to contribute to our debate. So whether you'd maybe give some thought in the future to putting yourselves forward directly to being decision makers and getting yourselves involved in politics, because you'd certainly be very welcome and your contributions have always been fantastic. So I'd, you don't have to give me a direct answer on that, but I would encourage you to think about that and to feel welcome and at home, and that this is a place for you too at the decision making table as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. When the leader of the council asked who were the members, can I ask who are the elected members on the Champs board?
Councillor Nico John.
Well, certainly there's myself, Councillor Garner, Councillor Patterson, and there is a representative from the Conservative group that should have a place on the Champions Board, but I don't know who that is. I'm sorry.
I'm afraid I don't know either, Deputy Provost. I'll need to check back the records on that and we'll come back to Councillor Kerr.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Midden. Thanks, Deputy Convener.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, folks? Councillor McCabe.
It's not strictly a question. I'd just like to thank the Councillor Patterson for bringing forward this motion, and sincere thanks to Mr. Galloway for his harrowing description of his experience of the care system. And I would hope that we as a council take up his offer to work with him and other agencies to ensure that care experienced is a protected characteristic. And I'd just like to personally thank Gemma, Lisa and Casey of Falkirk Champs for coming along with their deputation. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Spears.
Thank you, Deputy. Quite a harrowing tale we've just listened to. I have nothing but admiration and respect for you, because I know the difficulty you will face, especially with the address problem, getting bank accounts at job interviews. And we, as parents and protective parents, need to work a lot harder. And I mean a lot harder. Democracy's a very strange thing. Democracy is in the gift of the leaders. And I have suffered greatly for the deficit of democracy, not just in this council, but in other places. And I feel that you have suffered the same. And we need to get behind you. And I would certainly attend any of your meetings if you were to ask me, because we need to put behind any stigma that is of no fault of your own. You are not part of that decision making, and that's an abuse of your rights. And if we can do anything to correct that, then I would be more, and my group would be more than willing to help you. Thanks so much for coming along. I'm feeling quite emotional myself now, but it takes guts and it takes bravery. But if you don't fight, then who is going to? And we need to listen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, we'll get Councillor Patterson to raise a motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. You've heard from Terry today some of the harrowing outcomes faced by our care experienced individuals. I don't need to add to that. Our young people are so much more than statistics, which is why I'm so glad that I'm able to share this platform today with some of the Falkirk champs. They are most qualified to talk on their own lived experiences, and they are more than able to advocate for themselves. As the first group of Scottish young people to come forward and speak in support of this kind of motion, they've done themselves proud. And I know they will inspire many more to follow suit. There really is their movement, and I am honoured to play a supporting role in it. We can never undo adverse childhood experiences, but as corporate parents, we are responsible for safeguarding our young people and ensuring that they don't face any further trauma. We must strive to ensure that our policies and decision-making are informed and trauma responsive. I'm glad to report that things have come a long way during the time that I've worked in residential childcare. A major contributing factor to this progress has been the willingness of professionals to seek out and listen to our young people and their families. It makes sense that those with relevant lived experience should be consulted and involved at all stages of policy development to help guide us in best practice. If Council chooses to include care experience as a protected characteristic alongside the 9 already outlined in the 2010 Equality Act, we can help cultivate a more caring and nurturing environment for all of our young people. By calling on outside institutes to step up and do the same, not only will it improve lives, but it may go some way in relieving the strain currently placed solely on our overstretched social care system. Whilst there are many overarching acts and policies that cover the rights of children, these do not extend far enough for those with care experience. With the introduction of the promise, the Scottish Government did shift focus, but if we are to keep our promise to Scotland's children to grow up safe, loved and respected, then the views of care experienced individuals must be considered at every level of local and national decision making. Whilst the UK Government is slow in recognising their responsibility as corporate parents, children's lives cannot wait. We at Falkirk Council have the opportunity today to officially recognise and place value in our young people, because an adverse childhood should not dictate a future. I'm thrilled that Terry was able to join us today, and I thank him for all the work that he and others do nationally to achieve systematic change in the care system. I hope that in our decision today, we can support the movement towards equality for an often overlooked and forgotten group. By recognising care experience as a protected characteristic, I hope that we will not only be able to extend protections, but also go some way in combating the barriers and discrimination faced by the bairns of Falkirk who have been disadvantaged through no fault of their own. Therefore, I move the following motion. Bear with me, it is long. Falkirk Council recognises our collective responsibility as corporate parents and our commitment for the delivery of the promise that Scotland's children and young people should grow up loved, safe and respected. Council agrees to add care experience as a protected characteristic into our equalities impact assessments, where care experienced people is used to describe anyone who is currently or has been in the care system. For example, kinship care, looked after at home, foster care, residential care, secure homes and adoptions. Council also agrees that when officers add care experience to the current statutory list of protected characteristics, consideration should be given to adapting the impact assessment process to integrate children's rights and wellbeing impact assessments, to advance compliance with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, and to report back to the Executive. But care experience should be considered in all impact assessments from the date of Council agreeing this motion. Council agrees to continually and proactively seek out and listen to the voices of care experienced young people when developing new policies. Council notes that the addition of care experience as a protected characteristic would formally recognise the impact of any future decisions, services or policies may have on care experienced people. And finally, Falkirk Council formally calls upon all other bodies to treat care experience as a protected characteristic until such time as it may be introduced by legislation. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Do you have a seconder?
I would like to invite Councillor Meikle-John to second the motion.
Councillor Meikle-John.
Thank you, Deputy Provost, and thank you to Councillor Patterson. But most importantly, thank you to our young people and to Terry for being here today, and indeed for all the work that they've put into bringing this forward. Falkirk Council has fully embraced its role of being a corporate parent, and I apologise for using that term, but I'll explain as I go. Many years ago, we remain committed to making sure care experienced young people continue to experience high quality services. We are in the process of revising our corporate parenting plan to ensure it aligns with the wider promise commitments, and that will cover not just Falkirk Council but our partners as well. While the ambition of the promise is to overhaul the current care system, it does not create our corporate duties, just as we would for any other individual in our own families or in our own family circle. Scottish Government defines corporate parenting as a performance and actions necessary to uphold the rights and safeguard the well-being of looked after children or caregiver to ensure that physical, emotional, spiritual, social and educational developments are promoted. And that is something that I think every one of us should always refer back to as our duty. We have worked with care experienced young people to change the language used when professionals are speaking and writing about them, and make it more meaningful and more understanding. One of the key outcomes of that. Oh, sorry. This corner has a bit of a blind spot. Don't know whether that's deliberate that I sit here. One of our key outcomes of that was the Falkirk Champs has asked their corporate parents to be referred to as Falkirk Council's family and friends. This language, I'm pleased to say, has been changed and adopted across the services and reflected in our staff learning sessions. In 2022-23, we received funding from the Scottish Government of $923,000 for the Whole Family Wellbeing Fund to develop local family supports through children's services planning partnerships, to build local capacity for transformational whole system change and to scale up and drive that holistic full family support service. And that is something that our young people will be involved in helping to shape. And I know that there's work ongoing right now to do that. This is underpinned by our joint strategic aims and our local strength-based, non-stigmatised approach. These are all big words, but that is really exactly what we're trying to do, is what Councillor Patterson is saying, is take away that stigmatism from our care for young people. The evolution of this service, including interface with our third sector partners, remains a future priority, and it's going to be critical that we work very closely with our third partners who help deliver an awful lot of their support services. For children who have no option than to live within an alternative setting, such as foster care or care home, we ensure that they experience the best possible care. This is evident from the recent inspection to our care homes for young people who receive good grade, which is a significant achievement, but we will continue to continually strive to do better. Through the recruitment of foster carers remains a national challenge for all councils. We remain committed to increasing our foster care population. We currently have 59 foster carers, and in recognition of the impact of the cost of living on this value group, recently increased our allowances for kinship carers and foster carers by 5%, and that we know is not enough. We'll continue to work with Scottish Government and others on how we can improve that further. The Champions Board means that we hear directly from a range of young people. Our champs and our young champs regularly meet with adults and professionals from across the sector to provide their insight into lived experience and advise on service improvements. Falkirk Council employs a dedicated Falkirk Champs coordinator to support and empower our young people. And following, while not exhaustive, some examples that we have done in order to help support our young people. The leisure card, the Go Card Plus, which sees offers of free or substantially reduced fees in a range of sporting and leisure activities, and that's been hard fought for you to get to that. We've worked with the young care experienced people to change the language when professionals are speaking and writing about them, making it more meaningful. Work closely with the education and third sector providers to provide bespoke curriculum for care experienced young people. We use the Pinky Promise, which was produced by the Promise team, to help understand what actually the promise means in nice, easy to understand terms. and develop supported housing to help young people transition into independent living. We secured temporary funding that has allowed the recruitment of trauma-based informed policy officer who will inform practice and policy while influencing culture and system changes. We are brothers and sisters together, their special bond is nurtured in a safe, comfortable space. Okay, coming at me. I will finish just shortly. While we have made significant progress in our journey of change endorsed by the promise, this has enabled a cultural shift towards the rights-based, non-statutory approach. While the current economic climate is changing, we remain resolute in delivering for our commitments so that our care experienced children and young people are supported to be the best they can be. But that is not all. That we have to continue to strive to do more, and by making care experience a protected characteristic, embedding it in inequalities and poverty impact assessments, and making sure they are represented in helping and develop services, that will surely begin to make the significant difference that will help our young be they can going forward. I have to host an event. Our young care experienced people in council, and I will make arrangements to do that once the recess is over. That will give an opportunity for all elected members to meet informally with our champs and others to hear from the top and indeed learn a bit more about care experience and the impact it has, and that will be part of our learning and training going forward when we are making our decisions. Thank you, and sorry for that being very disjointed.
Thank you, Councillor Meikle-John. Councillor Spears.
Thank you, Deputy. If ever a motion needed a third, I would be more than happy to do that. I think we need to, as the leader of the council says, have further meetings with you, find out the experiences, but especially we need to investigate if you have been helped and supported by our teams in Falkirk Council. And not just that, when you go to college or you go on for further education, that you're getting financial support. Because you don't have that, you know, banky mum and dad behind you, which mine's is overdrawn, I may add, but you need that support. It's just that leg up, the help along the way. And anybody that's got kids know that kids rely on that, and that's part of your growing up, and it's part of every family's experience. And we're not here just to look after our own, we're here to look after everybody that comes under our corporate parenting structure. So we need to work with our social work departments to make sure that there's no 100 obstacles to use going on and getting what's required for the future, but that we're here to help. We're here to give you that leg up. I hope you agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steinbach.
Yeah, thanks, Deputy Provost. I'll keep this brief, so I'll probably just need the one microphone. Thanks, but especially thanks to the members of the Falkirk Champions Board for speaking to us. Also the Falkirk Council staff who support their work at the board, and Mr Galloway for coming along today. I'm just going to add to some of the points Councillor Patterson made. I think putting care experience as a protected characteristic is to acknowledge the distinct impact that our decisions could have on the care experience community and value that distinct impact when formulating our decisions. This was the recommendation to make this a protected characteristic of the National UK Care Review. Sadly, that was unimplemented, and it's unimplemented nationally to date. Locally, this work has been led by our fantastic Champs Board, campaigned for by people such as Mr Galloway, and it's proposed from people working in the care sector and is gradually being rolled out in local authorities. It's the right decision to make. I think that the UK government has notably omitted making care experience a protected characteristic shouldn't and won't prevent us from recognising it now, making sure we're enhancing the hard work our staff are doing to get the promise back on track and encouraging other local authorities in Scotland to get on and make the same correct decision. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I will likewise be very brief. I want to say a big thank you to Mr Galloway for the campaign that he has been running for some time and that has inspired us to bring this forward, inspired the champs to bring this forward today. A big thank you to Gemma, Isa and Casey, who have stood up and shown what a positive example they can provide. That care experienced young people are strong, are able to put forward their case very strongly and very capably. And I hope that this experience that they've had today will help them to go on and build their confidence. And I hope it will also serve as a beacon for other young care experienced people across the whole of Scotland and the whole of the UK. There's still a long way to go across Scotland and the UK in terms of getting care experience accepted as a characteristic under the equalities rules. And I believe you will be a beacon for those young people. Congratulations. I commend this motion to everyone here today.
Thank you. Right, I'm just going to take Councillor Colley last.
Okay, I will be brief. I think I'm obviously very supportive of the motion to make care experience a protected characteristic. As you'll know, one of the 5 pillars of the promise is planning. So it makes absolute sense that our own decision making and that of our partners and the things that we're involved with considers and plans for the specific needs of care experienced children, young people, and indeed adults who have been care experienced. And I think, you know, obviously I know a lot of the stats, but around the impact of being care experienced, but actually the words of Terry, Casey, Gemma and Isa are the ones who, they're the ones who actually tell it how it is. So I'm not going to go into that, but we know that care experience can have profound and long-term implications, and we have a moral duty as a council, as corporate parents, to try and change that picture. We have made some progress, you know, supporting children, including in extended continuing care, support for some of the financial impacts, and developing a model of providing care as close to home. But, you know, this is the start of a journey as opposed to one that is finished. And the key foundation of the promise is voice, about children and young people being listened to individually and in planning to deliver in Falkirk. I think everybody said about the Excellent Champions Board, absolutely fantastic. And it's great to have a care experience rep on our Education, Children and Young People's Committee. And the board have actually brought things, the Champs Board have actually brought things through the committee, things that we've all been very happy to support. But that is about making children and young people full participants in telling the council what they want to see, rather than us saying, well, this is what we've decided, and roll with it. So I'm really happy to commend the motion. And look forward to seeing it, to seeing, obviously I agree entirely about immediacy, about it being a protected characteristic, but looking at how we really develop that, not just in our children and young people services, but also in our adult services as well, and how do we really make sure that the words a protected characteristic actually become actions.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask if anybody's got any amendments?
No amendments.
No amendments, Deputy Provost. Quite happy to support the motion.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then is everybody happy to approve?
Agreed.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, folks. We'll take a short 5-minute break. Thank you. Okay, folks, if you can take your seats, please. Right, we'll move on to the second motion. It's the Falkirk Area WASPI Group. That's Councillor Binney. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to this full council on behalf of all the WASPI women in Falkirk Council area for allowing me to speak for this motion. There are 10,000 women affected from the Falkirk East and West constituencies, and the campaign itself started early 2016 in England, and also via contacts with the Women's S2C, it spread to Scotland very quickly. Falkirk area has a very strong active campaign group, and I'm sure every one of us here today knows somebody, a mother, a sister or an aunt who has been impacted by the change of the youth state retirement age. However, it's not the pension age itself that is in dispute. The issue is that the rise in women's state pension age has been too rapid and has happened without sufficient notice being given to the women affected, leaving them with no time to make alternative arrangements. The campaign has been a long, arduous battle since 2016, when the first rally took place in London and 3,000 1950s born women took part. Many are from Falkirk and all over Scotland. Since then, there's been numerous debates, rallies and petitions, and this has been supported by all political parties, and we are so grateful for that. However, it's the women today I want to speak about. So how have these 1950s women been treated unfairly and unequally, you might ask? 1950s women have been singled out for unfair and unequal treatment because of the way the increases to our state pension age has been brought in. WASPI has undertaken extensive research, including freedom of information requests, and have discovered that recommendations to give fair notice were ignored. The Turner Commission recommended 15 years notice and SAGA recommended 10 years notice. Yet, many women report receiving little or no notice. We weren't appropriately or personally notified of the first changes in 1995. Some of us have been hit for a second time when in 2011 further increases to our state pension age were brought in faster than the coalition government at the time promised, again with little or no notice to replan for a retirement. Women of a similar age had to wait disproportionately longer for their pension. A 1 year difference in birthday can make an almost 3 year difference to their state retirement pension age. Letters were sent out to women born on or after the 6th of April 1951 to the 5th of April 1953, only 14 years after the 1995 Pensions Act. A large percentage of these women only received a letter advising them of significant increases to their state pension age within a year, that is, when they were 59, of their expected state retirement age of 60. Very many others only received 2, 3, 4, 5 years notice. Women were given as little as 1 year's notice of up to a 6 year increase in their state retirement pension, compared to men who received 6 years notice of a 1 year rise to their state retirement pension. Many women report receiving no letter ever. But WASPI has received many stories, including the job market isn't ready to accept older women. Many women are forced to accept 0 hours, temporary and low paid contracts, which offer no financial security. They are being forced to take jobs which are inappropriate to the state of their health. They're forced to accept jobs that place them in a worsened financial situation. Irreversible decisions have been made in the expectation of retiring at 60. For example, in times of austerity, accepting early redundancy retirement. Single, divorced or widowed women often have no other source of income. Women have lost their independence, relying on their husbands' partners to support them. Some women are unable to work as they care for their elderly or ill parents, or are in health themselves. Women who have planned and saved for retirement are living on dwindling limited savings until they reach their due state retirement pension age, when the only income they will have will be the state pension. So you'll be asking, so where we are now with the campaign? The all-party parliamentary group, and that's chaired by Andrew Gwynn MP and co-chaired by Peter Algiers MP, which agrees with the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman's finding of maladministration, and that the APPG has submitted evidence to the PHSO calling for the highest compensation level available and making recommendations. So I urge all members here today to instruct our Chief Executive, Kenneth Laurie, to write to the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Mel Stride MP, to urge the Government to accept the reported findings of the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman that 1950s born women have been severely affected by the Department of Work and Pensions maladministration, to take swift action to provide an appropriate level of compensation to the women, to compensate beneficiaries of the estate of those who are deceased, and do this. Remember, these women have been waiting for many years for compensation. We cannot wait any longer. We are calling on the Government to agree fair and fast compensation for the Mosby women, rather than allow what has become a vicious cycle of government inaction to continue. I would like to say a special mention to Anne Campbell, the Falkirk area Mosby coordinator, for her unstinted and total resolve for keeping the campaign alive in the hearts of the Falkirk Mosby women and giving us hope. I would like this council to support the motion that is in the papers here today. I won't say the motion again, but I would like your support. Thank you so much. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Binney. Do you have a seconder?
Yes, got Fiona Colley.
Councillor Colley.
Thank you. In seconding the motion by Councillor Binney, it's clear that WASPy women have been disadvantaged, many severely, particularly by the lack of effective notice of the increase in retirement age. Many women expecting to retire at 60 suddenly found themselves with up to an additional 6 years to wait for their state pension. In our motion, Lorna has talked about some of the issues, but I'd like to focus on general pension inequality and how women, particularly those born in the 1950s, have been severely impacted by the changes. The UK government started with the premise that said that pension ages needed to be equal between men and women, but the WASPy women have been at the vanguard of an inequity. If we explore that argument further, women's pensions have never been and continue to be unequal. The Pensions Policy Institute talked about the reasons for this. Women are most likely to have taken time out of paid employment to care for children, and in addition, they are also more likely to have to take time out to provide unpaid care for a family member or friend. And women still, on average, earn 18% less than men. So women's overrepresentation in caring for children, for older relatives, for others, means breaks from careers, whether that is a reduction in working hours or being forced to completely step out of the workplace. This means that on average, by their early 60s, the median private pension wealth of women is just 1/3 of that of a man. 5% of all women in 2019 headed into retirement with no private pension, meaning that they had to rely wholly on the state pension and the income pension of a spouse or partner, and that's if they have one. Adding the inequality of later pension retirement with little ability to be able to plan effectively has had impacts on health, incomes and debt, and it's been devastating for too many women. The King's Fund found significant impact on mental health of this extended unexpected state pension age. An increase of up to 12 percentage points in the probability of depressive symptoms, along an increase in self-reported medically diagnosed depression among women in lower occupational grades, that is, those earning less. Caring for older or disabled relatives, family or friends also has an impact on health, with carers being twice as likely to be in poor health than non-carers and much more likely to be living in poverty. In research, a quarter of WASPI women reported that they struggle to buy food or basics, and 45% say they've been unable to pay household bills. 1 in 3 older women have experienced debt, with not knowing about increases in their state pension age given as a direct cause of their financial hardship. The lack of appropriate and timely information on state pension increases meant that close to 30% of WASPI women had already left work, shockingly finding out only at that time. A similar proportion have been unable to find new employment opportunities after leaving the workplace. By this time, many had made life-changing decisions, reducing their hours, turning down promotions or taking early retirement because they believed their state pension would come in at 60. The story of the WASPI women is truly shocking. I've had the chance to speak to many affected women over the years locally, but also have listened to their stories in the media and online. They deserve more than warm words and politicians say they will support and then doing nothing. Whilst as a council we do not have control over pensions, we can and we should stand up and support the motion to write to the Secretary of State for Work and Pension and ask that the UK government once and for all commits to not only compensating women but compensating them quickly.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. Councillor Hannah, do you have an amendment?
I have no amendment, but I would like to have a few words to say about it.
If you keep it brief.
I will be very brief. I think I want to thank Councillor Binney for bringing forward this motion and Councillor Colley for her support of it. And I will not add any more statistics to the very telling statistics that they have already given us. This motion, in some respects like the previous motion, is about equality and about justice. It's about equality for women and justice for those women who have been severely affected by the manner in which this has been brought forward. I have no issue with the equalisation of the pension age. That is not what this is about. This is about saying people who have planned to retire at 60 were unable to do so, or did so, and then, as Councillor Colley pointed out, subsequently discovered they couldn't get their pension. I'm very happy to support this motion, and I thank both Councillors Binney and Colley for bringing it forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr, have you got an amendment?
No amendment, Deputy Provost, but like everybody else, really happy to support the motion. As Councillor Binney says, it affects everybody's family. And it's, personally, I think it's ridiculous. And hopefully we get a resolution in the near future. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Spears, do you have an amendment?
Thank you, Deputy. Firstly, I would like to thank Councillor Binney. I know she's been very proactive. I've stood on the, I don't know if you call it a picket line or the WASPI line in Falkirk High Street. And this is no flash in the pan. You have a long and distinguished record on fighting for WASPI women. And for that, I know my group in this council will commend you. So today, here we have another national disgrace. Women in this day and age being treated like some kind of second-class citizen. You'll probably know that my group's pretty big on democracy, and there should be no democratic deficit regarding the women born in their 50s, worked most of their life, and then to be told just before they retire, sorry, we're not paying you till later. So when I say it's a national disgrace, then that's the message we should put forward. And I wish you every success in this campaign, and you know you'll have our 100% backing on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Spears. If there's no other amendments, then we'll see if everybody's agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, we'll move on to the last motion. That's older people. That's Councillor Kelly.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Provost and fellow councillors. I know you all have already read the motion I'm about to speak to regarding the reinstatement of an older person's minister. But I don't know if you've noticed that while the role of the Minister for Older People has disappeared, there's been an addition to the Scottish Government Cabinet of a Minister for Independence. This implies that independence is much more important to the government than older people in today's Scotland. I don't really believe anyone here in this council believe that we older citizens are second to anything. And I bring this motion forward as Falkirk Council's older persons champion. Older people's champion, because I keep getting pulled up for that. You may ask, why is it important we have a named minister for older people? First, as it says in the motion, we now have a named minister for 25,000 migrants and refugees in Scotland, but not a minister for the 2 million plus older people over the age of 50. As councillors, we should keep these numbers in mind, because as older people tend to have a greater, to come out and vote for elected members. Here are some of the facts associated with our ageing Falkirk population. I could have done it Scotland-wide, but since we're Falkirk Council, these are the people that we really represent here. Living in Falkirk, there are almost 67,000 people over the age of 50. 41% of Falkirk population, huge lump. Between 2001 and 2021, the number of over 65s increased in Falkirk by an astounding 38.7%. An amazing number it's led by in 20 years. In the period 2018 to 2028, the number of over 75s in Falkirk is projected to have an increase of 29%. In the same 10-year period, over 65s is expected to increase by 20.2%. Another salient fact is in 2021, the unemployment rate for Falkirk's over 50s was 42.9%. Huge gap. This unemployment rate means that many who in a few years will be retiring have a reduced pension, as they have not been working and who may have had to use any savings they may have made up to that point, and then to see themselves through the period of unemployment to use that money before they can actually retire and collect a pension. This will probably lead to an increase in pensioner poverty over future years. And if we take that in with the WASB situation, it's going to cost the country a fortune. The Scottish Health Survey showed 14% of all over 55s have an unpaid carer's role. How hard is it to work all day, then come home to a spouse, mother, father, other relative who have care needs, maybe even through the night? Although there possibly are some of our members here have already gone through that or are going through this trauma in Falkirk, that 14% would equate to 7,500 people over 55 being unpaid carers. 7,500 unpaid carers. And here's a statistic that lends to that. In 2021, the leading cause of death for females in Falkirk was dementia and Alzheimer's. This was a cause of 14.3% of all female deaths. Many who have been cared for at home for part or for the whole of their final years. We need someone to plan now how we will look after these older carers. These older carers, they keep our NHS and care sector from collapsing and that's not an exaggeration. They are that important. I say by having a named minister for older people reinstated in Scotland will ensure that as our population is this great increase in over 50s with age-related health problems that come along with it, we will have someone to lead and stand up for older people in the Scottish Government, no matter what party is in the administration. So I ask you please to support this motion today to demand the reinstatement of a named Scottish Older Persons Minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Do you have a seconder?
Yeah,
Councillor
happy to second. Just wanted to echo some of what Councillor Kelly said there. You know, it's we've got a lot of older people in Scotland, nearly 2 million. You know, we need somebody pushing for their issues, pushing for making their lives better and having them involved in policies that are made. So don't let it get too political or anything about this. I just think it's the right thing to do is to have an older persons minister in Holyrood, and I just hope everybody would support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Meikle-John, do you have an amendment?
Councillor Colley, who's going to respond?
Councillor Colley.
Yeah, I probably don't want to say too much on this. I think the motion speaks for itself. I'm generally supportive of the premise of a clarity on ministerial responsibility and the campaign that words matter. The role of Minister for Older People and Equalities, and that's what the Minister was before. In the previous Scottish Government did give an important message about the commitment to older people. And whilst the new Minister for Equality, Migration and Refugees appears to still have similar responsibility over pursuing policies to support equality for older people, we must recognise that older people and organisations representing them, to them it doesn't feel like this. And including older people in the title remains important and ensures that our connections are made across government, particularly within areas, and Councillor Kelly mentioned some of the specific areas, but within areas such as health, social care and housing, and they actually sit in different ministerial portfolios, but ensuring that those connections are made. And whilst, as I say, it appears to be within the remit of the Minister for Equalities, but I don't see what there's a particular issue in ensuring that that minister has older people named within their title to make sure that those connections are effectively made and that message is given to older people that their needs are high up the agenda. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr, do you have an amendment?
No amendment, Deputy Provost. Like the previous two motions, very, very happy to support Councillor Kelly's motion and agree wholeheartedly with sentiments.
Thank you. Councillor Spears, you have an amendment?
Thank you, Deputy. We have no amendment, but sincerely thanks once again, like Councillor Binney. Councillor Kelly has acted on his brief as the older person's champion and got his figures right, and some of these figures are really surprising, and I personally won't admit to being in some of these figures because my vanity will not allow. The motion we certainly will support, and I think the Scottish Government need to learn a big lesson for this. Ignore us at your peril, because we are strong and we will fight, and we will fight for what will work for all our lives. So once again, thank you, Councillor Kelly. Very well brought forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Binney, briefly.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I just want to say, Councillor Kelly, thank you very much for bringing that motion. I totally agree with you, and I just want to make a wee reference, obviously, observations. Scotland's population is continuing to age, with a 50% increase in over 60s projected by 2033. And there's a strong urban-rural dimension to the ageing population. While 17% of this population are over 60, the age group makes up 20% of the population in several rural local authorities. So on that point, we are getting older, and I really think it's important to have a named minister for older people so that can be highlighted. Just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As there's no amendments, is everyone happy to agree? Agreed. Thank you. Right, we'll move on to Treasury Management Strategy. That will be Amanda.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. So the report presented in front of you today on page 36 of the agenda is the Treasury Management Strategy for 23-24. It's prepared, a strategy is prepared each financial year, and it is considered by the Executive before it is considered by the Council. And the Treasury Management Code of Practice requires a minimum of 3 reports to be submitted each year to Executive and then Council, and that's the Treasury Management Strategy, a review of how we're performing against that strategy, and then a year-end outturn against the strategy. So the strategy itself collates all the Treasury-related activity that members have already approved through the revenue and the capital budgets, and it also sets out some of the information for service concession arrangements. Section 7 of the report sets out the capital expenditure that's been approved to date by members and the associated borrowing requirement, so that should all be relatively familiar to you. As I said, the strategy has already been considered by Executive in May of this year. I highlighted a few key points at that time, and I'll just run through those briefly. The first of the changes relates to changes to the Treasury Management Code of Practice, and that's the inclusion of the new liability benchmark indicator, which is on page 44 of today's agenda. In the main, it's really just a new way of presenting information that members will already have seen, and effectively it compares the Council's underlying need to borrow with the Council's actual loan debt. So it's therefore designed to show our need to borrow. The chart on page 44 of the agenda shows the Council's liability benchmark, and it shows that the Council will have a rising need to borrow, hitting a peak around 2028. And that reflects the capital investment programmes that members have already approved. So again, it shouldn't be a surprise because that will include the general fund and the housing investment. So the liability benchmark is designed to try and help us better anticipate borrowing requirements and to try to mitigate interest rate risks by planning well ahead. A further change through the code is the development of reporting on environmental, social and governance issues. As SITFA are currently developing guidance in this area, I would expect this to change moving forward, and we would bring back any updates and any necessary changes to our investment approach to members for consideration. In terms of the Council's overall financial position, a key focus for the Treasury team is the borrowing strategy, and that's particularly in light of the interest rate changes, which I will say a little bit more about. But over the last few years, the Council has taken out more short-term borrowing because it's tended to be significantly cheaper than longer-term borrowing. That difference has reduced at this point. Rates are relatively high for both short and long-term borrowing, but we have agreed with our Treasury advisors that we'll continue a short-term approach until rates start to stabilise and reduce and we can lock in some longer-term borrowing. But I suppose the most important area I want to highlight today is the financial outlook, and that includes the prospects for interest rates, which is on page 48 of the agenda. So members will appreciate that the report was written in April and considered by Executive in May. And so even in that relatively short period of time, the financial outlook has shifted quite a lot. In April, the average bank rate for 23-24 was expected to be 4.25%, and it's now around 5%. And just to confirm, I am talking about the average bank rate as opposed to the actual rate, which is currently 5%. So the table on page 45 noted at that time that interest rates were forecast to reduce to an average of 4% in 24-25, and these reductions were linked to reductions in inflation. But members will be aware that the predicted reduction in inflation hasn't happened, and that's leading to concerns that interest rates will have to continue to rise. So there's varying views on the scale of the increase that will be required. Some are anticipating a peak of 5.5%. Financial markets were factoring in an increase up to 6%. possibly until summer 2024. And just yesterday there was reports in the news suggesting a 6.25% peak. And I think the focus that you can see there is very much, it's about trying to get inflation under control. So that rise in interest rates could have quite serious implications for the affordability of our capital investment programme. The finance team have been working to finalise the year-end figures and our annual accounts, which have to be submitted to the external auditors by the end of this week. But thereafter, over the next 2 weeks, work will progress to update forecasts of borrowing costs, to stress test the affordability of the capital programme. And it's important for members to note that we do take a prudent approach to borrowing when the budgets are set, but the economic outlook has shifted quite a lot since the 1st of March. So economists are flagging that there's a risk that the UK will enter recession because that increase in interest rates may prevent growth. And that could pose further risk to the council because lower tax income for the UK government and the Scottish government could lead to poorer settlements for local government. And in addition, we find that demand for local government services tends to rise during a recession. So the financial strategy is due to come to council in September for approval, and that will update members on the financial outlook and the potential impact on the council and the work that we've been doing to review loan charges and borrowing costs. And finally, just to say that Executive, I noted that if members would find further training useful, we could schedule this in. And my sense from that meeting was that members would find that useful. So we'll therefore look to schedule in some further training after the recess. And as ever, if there's any specific areas that members would like to be covered, please let me know. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Councillor Nico John.
Thank you, Deputy Provost, and thanks to Amanda. As has been highlighted, that this paper has been to the Executive where it was discussed with some very good questions highlighted. No particular issues were raised at that meeting. However, what has become very apparent is just how critical it is to have this strategy to ensure that it's updated on a regular basis in order to adapt to such a volatile financial climate. And it's there to support our borrowing plan to meet our capital investment. The inflation remaining stubbornly high, short-term borrowing is still a better option to support our capital spend, and this is likely to be the case for some time to come. Therefore, it's important that our borrowing strategy is prudent and affordable, and this is what the strategy is designed to do. With the volatility and the prospect of a further recession, our Treasury management plan will indeed become more important and to help us in our decision making and give us that flexibility to be able to just make our decisions based on what is going to be affordable going forward. But I think there will be opportunities for members to have more training, to have greater understanding, as it's become far more important around our financial governance to be able to make those good decisions in such a difficult and pressure time. So I'm happy to move the report. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Provost, can I formally second, please, and reserve the right to come back in?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah, do you have an amendment?
I have no amendments, just thanks to Amanda for her very clear report and her offer of training, which she knows I will always say yes to.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr, do you have an amendment?
No amendment, Deputy Provost.
Thank you. Councillor Spears?
I have no amendment, but I would like to say once again we are hit by this tidal wave of difficult times. We've asked previously with an online independent group if we have approached the Scottish Government to explain the plight of not just Falkirk Council but local government throughout Scotland. And while they continue on their task of going ahead with projects they see fit, they forget their primary objective, which is to help local government. So I would again request we write to the Finance Secretary and explain the plight of local government, which I'm sure he's well aware of, but he needs to take the time and listen. and the Scottish Government need to listen to local government.
So is that an amendment?
Yeah, I could make an amendment that we write to the Scottish Government and ask them to seriously look at how they're financing local government.
Okay, do you have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Deputy Provost, could I just say that particularly in light of COSLA leaders on Friday, that it would be inappropriate to make that decision at this moment in time. There is the new deal in the fiscal framework being worked on for local government, and until we know the detail around that, I think it would be prudent to hold back on making any further representation right now.
Okay.
Can I come back in that, Deputy Provost?
Can I come in first?
Colin first and then Councillor McCabe.
Deputy Provost, I think the important thing to consider here is the actual item of business that's before the Council just now, which is the Treasury Management Strategy. It's a very discrete aspect of the financial arrangements of the Council, and I have to say I think an amendment which is aimed at the broader issue of the financing of local government as a whole is not relevant to this particular item.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Councillor McCabe.
No, thanks very much, Deputy Provost, and thanks to Mr Moody. I don't have anything further to add. Colin's quite neatly closed the tangent down, if you like. Thanks.
Okay, is that withdrawn then?
So I would just like to say the financial local government is vitally important, and every opportunity we get, we should be reminding the Scottish Government of that fact. And if this is an opportunity, then I will certainly take it. But it's entirely up to yourselves whether we support this council and continually request to the Scottish Government that their finance packages to us are not sufficient.
Okay, we'll take Colin's advice, and it's not relevant at the moment. Thank you. Right, we'll open it up for discussion. Nobody? All right, everybody happy to agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on. Service concession arrangements, that's Amanda again. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. So the subject of service concessions has been considered by members on a number of occasions now. There was a briefing session on the 6th of February this year, which was well attended, a report to Council on the 23rd of February, and the use of service concessions was approved by Council at the budget meeting on the 1st of March this year. So that decision by Council in March was to agree to implement the revised guidance on service concession arrangements, with the exception of the prepayment element, which would come back to Council for decision during 23-24, and that's where this report comes in. As a reminder, a service concession arrangement is the term usually given to the contract between a public sector body and a private sector body, where the private sector body provides a public service for a period of time. And at the end of the period, the private sector body is usually required to hand over the assets at the end of the contract. So service concession arrangements are usually accounted for over the life of the contract, and the revised guidance from the Scottish Government and approved by members allows the Council to account for the PFI MPDO capital debt over the life of the asset rather than the contract. And as previously discussed, this is a technical accounting change and it doesn't impact on the contracts themselves. As a reminder, the important point in all this was that local authorities were allowed to apply the guidance retrospectively, and that meant that the Council could look back at what had been paid to date based on the contract life and compare it to what would have been paid under the asset life. And members will recall the figure of 71 million. That was the retrospective adjustment that was generated through the change, and that's on page 66 of the agenda. And of that 71 million, 21 million relates to the MPDO prepayment, and that's shown at the top of page 67. And the budget report had noted that the Council approval to use the prepayment element of the retrospective adjustment was subject to a slightly different set of rules. than the other elements, and again that a report would come to council for approval of this element. So if we approve that today, or if we get approval of that today, sorry, this will mean that the council can still access the full 71 million of funds of the retrospective adjustment. And members will recall that any proposed use of the funds has to be brought to members for approval. And finally, I would just want to restate some of the messages that I presented as part of the 23rd of February report and the March budget report. And that's just that service concessions are similar to reserves. And so whilst the use of the service concession buys time and allows the council to reprofile the budget gap, it doesn't fundamentally address the structural deficit of the council, the financial budget deficit. Therefore, the council still has to focus on recurring ways to balance the budget. And if we can identify recurring ways to balance the budget, we can minimise our reliance on service concessions for budget purposes, and that would give us the opportunity to use service concessions for much needed investment. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you, Amanda. Councillor Meikle-John.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. As Amanda has highlighted, the agreement on the level of the service concessions is part of our budget process, and while the technicalities of this report were touched on at that time, we now have to formally agree how or where the service concessions will be drawn from. Falkirk in a pretty unique position, having paid 24 million up front for our NPDO schools, and that has left us in a slightly different position to others, and that's why it's so complex, and we've got the report before us today. It's important that we're able to utilise the service concessions to their full effect, while remembering that only gives us a bit of time to develop saving plans to meet our identified budget gap. It does not negate the need to make those savings through transformation or service design or direct income. The sooner we're able to do that, and the earlier that we can implement the savings and reach a balanced budget, will limit the use required of service concessions, and the more likely that we'll be in the position where service concessions will be available for investment. That could be within our sport and leisure communities or within our learning estate. So I thank Amanda for bringing this forward, and I hope that people will see the sense in what's been proposed, and indeed support the report, and obviously it will inform our budget planning and our financial strategy going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a seconder?
David Provost, happy a second, reserving the right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Hannah, do you have an amendment?
No amendments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr, any amendment?
No amendment, Deputy Provost.
Councillor Spears, any amendment?
No amendment, Deputy.
Thank you. Okay, everybody happy? Agree?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Right, we'll move on. Item 7 is the former Royal Hotel Slamanan, and that's Mr. Kettrick, please.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. The purpose of the report is to update members on the current position of the former Royal Hotel Slamanan and to outline proposals for a way forward. Members will recollect that Falkirk Council agreed in October 2022 that the building had been closed for some time, was in a poor state of repair, and its appearance reflected poorly on the village of Slamanan. Officers were asked to bring back a report to Council that considered the issue, including potential purchase, and make recommendations on the best way forward. This report responds to that request and recommends that officers engage with the Kings and Lords Treasurers Remembrancers, or the KLTR for short, with a view to agreeing terms subject to further approval to secure ownership of the property, and that should the council successfully secure ownership of the property, it will be demolished due to its condition, with funding coming from the Regeneration Fund. Agree that officers progress engagement and consultation with the local community on the future use of the site for located at the cross. Instruct officers to identify the resources required to deliver any community ambitions for the site, and agree that a report comes back to Council Executive with the information on the outcome of the consultation and the funding review. As outlined in the report, the owners of the property, Brock Homes Limited, went into liquidation and were dissolved in January 2022. The property is therefore considered ownerless, and in Scots law, the Crown can claim such property. This is handled by the KLTR and is generally a last resort to ensure all matters are dealt with diligently. Traditionally, in dealing with properties of this type, there is a long legal diligence process and timescales. And recognising this, the KLTR have developed a new approach, the Ownerless Property Transfer Scheme, or OPS for short. And the purpose of OPS is to remove the obstacles which exist in relation to bringing ownerless property back into public use. And as a collaborative approach, they've sought to adopt to deliver benefits to the communities. Officers have met with representatives of the KLTR and have agreed in principle the approach to dealing with the Royal Hotel, which will involve the council acquiring the property, demolishing it to remove the dereliction risk and eyesore, and leaving the area to be consulted upon in terms of future use with the community. The KLTR have confirmed that the council approach is compatible with the OPS pilot, and they will seek to engage to progress the transfer of the property to council ownership at a value of £0. By using the OPS scheme, the KLTR will accept the liability of any previous owners being restated by Companies House and trying to recover its previously held assets and property, thereby removing the risk from the council. An initial feasibility has been undertaken on the costs associated with the demolition of the property, and this has concluded that it could cost up to approximately £100,000 to demolish and clear the site. It is proposed that the former Royal Hotel demolition and associated purchase costs are paid for from the council's existing £1 million regeneration fund. This activity would be delegated to the Director of Police Services to conclude, and it is proposed that a further report on the outcome of the local public consultation in relation to the future use of the site will be reported upon when available. In conclusion, Provost, the proposals outlined in the report will enable the Council to secure the ownership of the property and demolish it, and thereby resolve a long-standing eyesore that has been a blight on Slamanan Cross for a number of years. I'm happy to take any questions, Provost.
Thank you, Mr. Kettrick. Councillor Meiklejohn. Councillor Garner, sorry.
Thank you, Deputy Provost, and thanks to Mr. Kettrick for running through the report. Really pleased to see this report coming forward and the proposals being presented that will remove real long-standing issues of the former Royal Hotel in Slamanan. Given the community, the comments in social media, the community will be really pleased also to see the council taking action in this. The building is an eyesore, and as highlighted, the owners are a dissolved company and there is no prospect of the property being redeveloped due to its condition and limited footprint. It is good to see that officers have been able to engage with KLTR and get agreement to participate in the pilot scheme. OPTS will allow the building to be acquired by the council and to progress its demolition. The council will acquire the property, which is in such poor condition it has been valued by private chartered valuation surveyors at £0, and demolish it. As the administration's establishment of the Regeneration Fund, this positive intervention can happen, and with the proposals likely to come forward from the consultations on developing further proposals to use the Regeneration Fund, I hope we will see the site put to good use. This is the largest investment in the village for many years, and there's hopefully more to come. In conclusion, the acquisition of the former Royal Hotel, its demolition and clearance is good news for Slamanan, and the site will, I hope, provide a great opportunity for the community, who will be consulted to bring forward proposals to support wider generation of village centre. Happy to move the recommendations.
Thank you. Have you got a seconder?
Deputy Provost, I'm happy to formally second and reserve the right.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah, do you have an amendment?
I have no amendment, and just pleased to see officers responding to the interests of the community.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr, do you have an amendment?
No amendment, Provost, but delighted that this has been brought forward. And since it was the Conservative group's proposal to bring it forward, we're glad that the administration and officers have brought it forward to the council. Having been brought up and born and bred in the village, I can remember when the hotel was a prosperous hotel, and I had many a good night in it. Unfortunately, through the years, unfortunately, through the years, has deteriorated and has been an eyesore for the village. And I'm sure that all members, especially the local members, will be appreciative of this happening, as this is what the people of Slamanan really want. And we look forward to see what the villagers would like in its place. So thank you very much, Deputy.
Thank you. Councillor Spears, you got an amendment?
I do not have an amendment, but I have some questions, Deputy. I have many friends in Slamanan, and some of them have been contacting me regarding this. So what I'm relaying is not particularly from myself, but from concerns within the village. Is there somebody living in the premise at the present, is the first question. And second, this is really the tip of the iceberg for a lot of properties in our district. I was doing a home visit yesterday, somebody who's had a house unoccupied adjoining hers for 18 years. It's been completely stripped, no floorboards, and she's had to live with a messy garden for 18 years. I believe there is something going through the Scottish Government at the moment on vacant properties, because people who live surrounding these properties, it's a nightmare for them. And not just that, the heating costs of their particular premise are through the roof because they'll never heat next door. The dampness problems are horrendous because they can never repair the dampness next door. But my primary question is, whilst I have no objections to this building coming down, and I'm too young to have remembered being there personally, but is there somebody living in that property at the moment?
My understanding, Deputy Provost, is that there is nobody living in the building. It is ownerless, and the company that did own the property are now dissolved. So if someone is living in there, then clearly that's a matter that will need to be dealt with. But as far as we're aware, there's nobody living in the property.
I'll go further. I believe it is being dealt with by our homeless team. So we can't go knocking it down if somebody's actually living in it. We need to ascertain if it is totally void.
Deputy Provost, I think what the report in front of us today is for us to progress the acquisition of the property, and we would pick up if there is any occupancy in the building, which we don't believe there is, and we would certainly progress the removal so that we would get vacant possession to enable demolition.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. No questions, just a really brief comment. As the local member for Slamanan, it is really encouraging to see that the investment is going beyond what is just our statutory requirement. Projects like this can really go a long way in reinvigorating villages, and I know it will in Slamanan. I'm delighted and I'm looking forward to seeing how the project develops. It definitely gets a vote for a green space for me, and I hope that other villages are able to benefit from the regeneration fund as much as Slamanan is. And I just want to say well done to all the team who are involved in this process.
Thank you. Councillor Redmond.
Oh, thanks, Deputy Provost. Just kind of echoing Siobhan's points there. You know, I've drove through Slamanan a good few times, and the building is a complete eyesore. If anybody's living in there, I'd be shocked, other than pigeons, to be honest. And I think it's great to see the £1 million regeneration fund being put to good use. It's good that Slamanan and Bonnybridge were included in that, and it's great to see Slamanan getting some good use out of it, but I'm looking forward to Bonnybridge getting some good use out of it as well, because we've got a lot of ideas in Bonnybridge and people are really excited about the regeneration fund, so we're also keen to progress with making a difference in our village centre as well. I just had one question on 5.5 on page 73. If the council agrees to progress acquiring the property, costs associated with the acquisition such as land and building transition tax and necessary legal fees, these are estimated to be approximately £25,000. I'm just wondering, like you said, obviously we're looking to buy it at nil cost. So would there be a land and building transition tax associated with something bought at nil cost?
There is various thresholds for the acquisition of the property. There is unlikely to be anything, but there will be a registration fees as part of the registration of the property.
All right, thanks. So is the £25,000 more of a budget for legal fees rather than what it'll actually cost? And if there was anything left over, would it go back into the regeneration fund?
Deputy Provost, the answer is yes. It's an estimate budget to cover all the professional and legal fees we will need to undertake structural surveys on the building. We'll obviously need to deal with the conveyance, which is not simple in dealing with ownerless properties. We may have to take title indemnity insurances and things like that. So it's an estimate of fees at this stage, and obviously we will only spend what we need from the regeneration budget.
Thanks, Mr. Treasury.
Thank you. Councillor McKay.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. I wouldn't dream to interfere in anything the local members are proposing for Slamanan. They know the area better than anyone. But my interest was just piqued. A wee question to Mr. Kettrick. Now, could anybody be purchase the property, Paul? I'm just really curious. Why has it been up for offer and no one's coming forward? Is that down to demolition costs, whatever? I mean, if I was getting there myself, buying it for nothing, as you've already highlighted, potentially there could be 25 grand worth of cost to the council. But I could go in there, knock that down, and then be proposing, I would imagine, 4 or 5 houses or something. I'm just curious. That was all.
Deputy Provost, the previous owners, Brock Homes, we understand, did have proposals to redevelop it. It wasn't financially viable, as the valuation that we've seen that was commissioned by the KLTR has highlighted that it's just not viable for redevelopment due to its condition and the lack of size in effect. So, yes, whilst somebody else could come forward and purchase it, or could have come forward and purchased it from Brock Homes, they didn't. We understand it was, available for people to purchase. It didn't. They've now become dissolved. There is a process where the property can transfer to the KLTR if they wish to claim it. The issue is it is a liability for them, so they may disclaim it. At that point, they would then potentially offer it out, and their first port of call is always the local authorities. So we are, in effect, getting in and doing it through the OPS scheme, which removes the liability from us of any future claims from the dissolved owners, somebody reinstating the company. So that's why we would progress it at this stage, as opposed to waiting for that fairly lengthy process to evolve, where the building would continue to deteriorate. And ultimately, if the building was to deteriorate or become open in a source of antisocial behaviour and vandalism and things like that, the council would need to intervene at that point as a derelict building, and so it would cost us money then. So we're actually preempting future potential issues.
Wonderfully detailed response. Thanks very much, Paul. It answers a lot of questions for me personally. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I don't see anybody else with questions. Happy to agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on to item 8. Hold on. Falkirk Health and Social Care Partnership update. That's Patricia Cassidy, please.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. You have before you today a report which is providing councillors with an update on the work of the Health and Social Care Partnership since our last report to Council on 14th of December 2022. It provides information on the continued efforts in response to the ongoing whole system pressures and also our service redesign work. In addition, it summarises some of the reports that have been considered by the Integration Joint Board over the last period into 2023, where the IGB has approved or considered those recommendations. So within the report, you will see and summarised in the Health and Social Care update in section 5, reference to the development of our new strategic plan for 2023 to 2026. This is a key document to guide the work of the partnership, to identify and review our high-level outcomes and our priorities that will inform our delivery plan. I would like to take the opportunity just to draw members' attention to the plan that's appended to the report, and particularly the information that's in the section in context, which starts at chapter 10, and that gives a really good summary of the available data and the analysis of that data on certain factors that are affecting our communities within Falkirk. So, for example, the projected 6% growth in population that's anticipated by 2043, and that's notable and shows within figure 2 the percentage growth in certain parts of that population. So while we expect only a 2.2% growth in our working age population, we expect that we will see an 80% growth in the over 75 population. And that is particularly significant given our current challenges in rising demand for care, but also in our challenges in providing workforce and recruiting and retaining workforce. The report, the strategic plan also contains information at locality level, looking at some of the challenges around health with a specific section on mental health. Also around economic factors that are within our purview. So I would really recommend and hope that that information there is used quite widely by our colleagues in some of the plans that we'll be putting forward that are not just about health and social care. In the practice. So within the document you'll also see appended the carers strategy for 2023 to 26. And that again is a critical document given our data around the population and the percentage of people that we know, including young people, that are providing unpaid care within our communities, and also our reliance on that unpaid care. So that's a key document for us, which again we've developed in partnership with our local carers and people who are receiving care. You'll see at section 517 a reference to the continuing system pressures and the work that we're doing to address that in partnership with the Health Board and Click Manager and Stirling partnership, as well as critically our communities, our third sector and independent partners. You'll also see a summary on the progress with the integration arrangements for Forth Valley-wide health services, and I'm delighted that we're making considerable progress in that since the beginning of the year with the transfer of primary care and other services into the partnership. We're completing a whole series of due diligence processes with some support from Scottish Government as part of the Forth Valley, NHS Forth Valley escalation process. There's an update on that in addition within the report as well at section 5.41. Hopefully you find the summary helpful. Each of the areas there has been a full paper that has gone to the Integration Joint Board, and those papers are readily available on our website, but also if you need any more information, myself and the team can provide that. I'm joined by Suzanne Thompson and Martin Tom, and we're happy to field any questions or comments that members may have. Thank you.
Councillor Colley.
Thank you. I'm going to not say too much here because I know members will have questions, and I've always got great interest in the reports from the IGIB and the partnership. The partnership has been doing some excellent work with changes and new developments such as Cunningham House, and I welcome the opportunity to also discuss this, but also to showcase the strategic plan and carer strategy, and to take the opportunity to thank the leadership team. They've really led the partnership through a time of change, with more services being integrated into the partnership and the ongoing challenges across the system. And I also want to pay special tribute to each and every person who delivers services for our partnership in home care, care homes, day services, community health, mental health services, in rehab and interim care, and in GP practices and health services across the district, as well as the many who deliver health services in our acute and community hospitals. They make such a difference to people's lives and amongst all the challenges, and I think they're always well rehearsed challenges. They have continued to provide high quality services to the citizens of Falkirk. So I really hope that everyone will enjoy that. I think the strategic plan and carer strategy are absolutely excellent, and really important documents for us going forward, and to deliver the outcomes that are best for the people of Falkirk. So I will close with that.
Okay, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I'd like to just echo some of the things that Councillor Colley has said, and say a big thank you to Patricia and her team in terms of the work that they have done. Also, like you, pleased to see that primary care is coming into the IJB at last. And well done to all the people who have been working on that over the years it has taken. I wonder though if you might like to say something a bit more about how bringing the primary care services into the IJB is going to benefit the people of the Falkirk Council area, and how it's going to improve the delivery of services over time. I recognise that it's very early days at the moment.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Provost. Thank you, Councillor Hannah and Councillor Colley. The transition of primary care into the partnership is a really critical one, as being that real anchor point for the delivery of community health services, particularly. When we're talking about primary care, GP practices are obviously at the heart of that, but it's not exclusively about general practice. It's about the broader primary care family and professionals, which include allied health professionals, optometrists at the local opticians, dentists and community pharmacists, all of who have really valuable roles in the prevention of ill health, promotion of well-being, but also treatment of a range of health conditions. So looking at with the primary care improvement plan and the GP contract nationally, you'll be aware we have provided a number of briefings with GP colleagues and our GP lead about the changes within primary care and the broadening out of the professional support and advice that is available for people, not necessarily solely coming in to see a GP, but having direct access into an expert enhanced physiotherapist, community mental health nurses, pharmacy support within the GP practices, as well as the practice nurses, and links into community nursing and palliative care as well. The work that we've done with our communities, and with great support from a whole range of people across the communities in the system around the redevelopment of Falkirk Community Hospital, the focus that people felt was the need for a broader health and wellbeing hub as a model for the delivery of not just health specific services, but a whole range of health and wellbeing opportunities and services, including community-led and third sector provided services. And that's still very much, you'll see a reference to that in the report. That's very much will continue in the work that we do alongside working with the Council and the Health Board about any capital planning and any opportunities that there will be to strengthen our provision of health and wellbeing. We'll link in very strongly with community planning and with some of the community decision making and consultations that there are. more broadly with community planning partnerships to look at the full development of our locality plans, which will be able to focus and involve primary care as well as a range of other partners and really enhance the responsiveness of our services and the way we commission and design services to meet local need. So, you know, myself and the team are really excited about being able to do that, emerging from COVID and all its challenges. But the need for that, I would suggest, is even greater, given the levels of health inequality that we know that exist within Falkirk and the rest of Scotland, and the need for us to do targeted preventative work. I didn't allude to it in my previous overview of the report, but we've also had the transfer into the partnerships of quite a substantial health improvement team, which means we will be able to have people working directly at a local level, really guiding and leading some of that health improvement and work to tackle specific health issues within our local communities. So I hope that's helpful, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I was very pleased to hear the last couple of sentences that we've just been given, but if you turn to page 80 on 5.7, the strategic plan, this is not what I identify in my town, a town where it's so difficult to see a doctor that how do you hope to improve the community's resilience and empower them regarding health matters. I was very sad to get some correspondence from an officer of the council to say that Grangemouth's child poverty and etc. has been overtaken by Falkirk North. But I believe there's a plan in place. I believe it's lottery funded. I wish you every success, because in the last 10 years we've had no success getting Grangemouth removed for child poverty, urban deprivation, and it doesn't somehow fit in with the strategic plan. And I know that's only from 2003, so I certainly look forward to 3 years of great improvement, especially regarding strong, sustainable communities in Grangemouth. I look forward to seeing a great improvement in the health service in Grangemouth, and I certainly look forward to money coming forward to fight child poverty in Grangemouth.
Okay, thank you. Everybody happy to know?
Agreed.
Great. Councillor Nimmo.
Yep, I just had a quick question there. Just on the back of what's already been said, and I agree totally with Councillor Spears in relation to Grangemouth. Are we still struggling to recruit GPs? How are we placed at the moment? Because I know there's still a lot of public opinion out there that are criticising individual practices. Kersey Bank and Grangemouth being a major one. A lot of concerns again regarding that. That was put into special measures some time ago because of problems. And it seems to be rearing its ugly head again. Can we just get an update in relation to where we are with the recruitment of GPs?
There's a report going to the Integration Joint Board on Friday on an update on primary care improvement, and I can certainly circulate a link to that for elected members if that would be helpful. It does include some detailed information. You probably are aware that across Scotland there are challenges with GPs and the recruitment and retention of GPs. As you'll be aware, GPs are independent, self-employed practitioners. And the way that they deliver services is as within that context. So there are challenges. There's also challenges around the delivery of out of hours, which has also in the process of being transferred over into Falkirk, and securing good clinical cover out with normal working hours and at weekends for the out of hours and minor injuries service. And that's an area which we'll be reporting on in some detail to the Integration Joint Board, not to this meeting, but a subsequent meeting. One of the key things is really managing expectations of the public. That I know, speaking to people, that if they phone and they've got a musculoskeletal strain or an injury, and they actually are directed directly to the enhanced physiotherapist. On occasion, people perceive that they've not seen their GP, therefore they're not satisfied, whereas they've been, rather than seeing the GP and then being referred to physio, they've gone straight into the physio through the triage system. So your challenge is a good one, councillor. I think there's nationally and also locally, there's work to be done to make sure that people understand the range of services that are available and the opportunities that are available to see an appropriate skilled health professional, and that will not always be a general practitioner. Sadly, it is a challenge, but enhanced and advanced nurse practitioners, physiotherapists, mental health professionals, as well as the optometrists, pharmacists and dentists can also provide good services where it's appropriate for the condition that the individual has. So we're in a very changing landscape, and there are challenges that are national challenges, there are also local challenges, but I would hope that you will see within your localities, as we roll out our locality planning, a much closer working with the primary care providers and with our GP practices, and much more engagement at community level about the way we can shape and deliver and commission services locally. So there is tremendous opportunity here, and we will keep you abreast of those changes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Patricia, and I look forward to receiving the link from you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Can I just ask a question about the table figure 4 on page 105? We've got here over 10 years. We're saying that the percentage change in the rate of deaths between people aged 15 and 44 has increased 50% in the most deprived areas, and then it's increased. In fact, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you've got the very last one's the least deprived areas, and it's went up 40%. But in every one of the other areas, it's been going down, with the most deprived going down 50%. So that just seems crazy to think that we're going backwards so much. It seems like a bit of a crisis, to be honest. But how are these levels sort of defined? Like in the Falkirk area, obviously you've got a sort of number 1 most deprived area, but a number 4 area, could that be a quite well off area? What is a level 5 areas? Could you maybe does that make sense?
Suzanne, are you able to comment on that?
All right, sorry. And then just was thinking, what's behind this huge increase in deaths over like the last 10 years? And then there's a table below, and I'm trying to kind of understand it, but I was wondering, are these, it's talking about DALYs per 100,000. So is this to cancer we're losing 6,000 days of life per 100,000 people? For mental health we're losing, could you maybe just talk through that table a wee bit, because I find it quite hard to understand.
Will I come in, Patricia? Thank you. I'm trying to pull up that table, but in terms of your first point about SIMD areas, so those are, so one, you're right, is probably the worst areas, and we've got some information around that in terms of those differences, as you pointed out, in terms of the sort of population and how that links to deprivation areas. What I would say is we've extracted some of the information from a very comprehensive strategic needs assessment that was developed to accompany the development of the strategic plan, and I can send a link to that includes some more information. What we're very mindful of is that we deferred the development of the strategic plan by a year, and that was to take account of the impact of COVID in terms of the demand it was placing on services, but importantly the need to sort of consult quite extensively with our communities, and COVID obviously was having an impact around that in terms of contacts, etc., and how we would do that. And we're also very mindful that there's some data still that we have data gaps around and understanding the impact of COVID and also longer term. So we're looking to constantly keep an eye on the data, particularly the census information when that comes out later on this year around inequalities information, etc., and the impact around there. And we'll refresh and refine our data as we go. I'm happy to pick up out with any sort of particular points around the data itself, if that would help, member.
I think that would help, because I know obviously you brought up COVID, which I never really factored in, but I think that's absolutely shocking that we've had over 10 years with an increase of 50% in with a lowering of 50% in the life expectancy for people in the most deprived areas. So I think it's definitely something of interest, and I'd like to pick that up with you. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, right, we'll move on to execution of deeds. Colin.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Provost. This report is for information only and records the deeds which have been formally executed by the Council, but I'll attempt to answer any questions members have.
Okay, any questions? Councillor McCabe.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. Mr. Moody, page 214, unsurprisingly, discharge or disposition by Falkirk Council in favour of Mr. Danvier and Mr. Ali, 5 Stirling Street, Denny. Can you give me a wee bit of background information into that, Colin? Why is it a disposition and what it involves?
A disposition is just the standard way of transferring property from one owner to another. It's just that's all it represents. I don't know the details of the particular transaction. I'm happy to go away and get that information and come back to Councillor McCabe.
Thanks, Colin. The reason for the question is that transfer of property. I didn't particularly know 5 Stirling Street myself, so I've just Google mapped it, and I see that it's actually part of the new Denny Town Centre, which the council own. I don't think we sell things or transfer property to. I thought they were all tenanted. So I'm just curious at that, Colin, but we can speak offline about it, yeah.
Any other questions? Councillor Deacon.
Thanks very much. I just want to go to Councillor McCabe. The 5 Stirling Street was a new shop opening up. It came to the licensing board in November, I believe it was. And they were just opening up a brand new shop, and there's a family who's run another shop nearby, and their son's wanting to open it up a wee bit and branch out.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. And this is a formal report which comes to this meeting of the Council this time each year, and it's to deal with any issues which may arise during the course of the summer recess, which would ordinarily be dealt with by a committee or by the Council itself. It's really a stopgap provision, and in reality there are very few decisions taken under these recess powers. Where there is such a decision taken, it will be reported to the Executive following the summer recess. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you, Colin. Councillor Meikle-John.
Happy to move, Deputy Provost.
Okay, we got a seconder.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Hannah, do you have a
No amendments.
Councillor Kerry, any amendments?
No amendments, Deputy Provost.
Councillor Spears?
No amendment.
Okay, thank you. All right. Happy agree?
Deputy Provost.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Nimmo, sorry.
I've got a question here for Colin, Deputy Provost. What would actually constitute an urgent issue?
And it's a very case-specific position to be determined at the time. I suppose the urgency will arise depending on the circumstances concerned. It might be, for instance, there is some kind of emergency situation that develops that requires a decision to be made, and that can't wait for the council to meet. It may be something to do with a contract that needs to be let urgently, just to preserve the council's position in relation to a particular matter. It's hard to say in the abstract without some examples. Maybe the best thing I could do is go back and look at the decisions that have been taken previously over the last couple of summer recesses, and we'll provide Councillor Nimmo with those examples.
Okay, thank you. The next scheduled meeting is the 27th of September at 10 AM, and I hope everybody has an enjoyable break. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost.
And there's lunch there as well, sorry.